The warehouse was wrong. Captain John Price knew it the moment they breached the eastern entrance. His HK-416 raised in textbook tactical positioning, his eyes scanning the interior through the green glow of night vision optics. 30 years of combat experience had given him an instinct for when operations went sideways, a sixth sense that screamed warnings before conscious thought caught up. This operation was screaming. The intel had been airtight. Station Chief Kate Laswell had personally verified the source. A Nova 6 chemical shipment traced through 3 shell corporations and 2 dead drops to this abandoned industrial complex along the European coast. Coordinates confirmed. Satellite imagery cross-referenced, thermal signatures indicating recent activity. The kind of precision intelligence that Task Force 141 had built their reputation on. Except the warehouse was empty. Clear left. Simon Ghost Riley's voice came through the comm, his distinctive Manchester accent rendered flat by years of operational discipline. The lieutenant moved through the shadows like his call sign suggested. 6'4" of lethality wrapped in tactical black and that skull-patterned balaclava that had become legend in certain intelligence circles. His L115A3 sniper rifle swept the left flank with mechanical precision. Upper rafters clear. John Soap McTavish reported from his position covering the vertical angles, his Scottish brogue carrying the kind of controlled energy that came from someone who'd learned to channel aggression into surgical efficiency. The sergeant's M4A1 tracked along support beams that should have provided cover for hostile forces. There were no hostile forces. Rear exit secured, Kyle Gaz Garrick confirmed, the youngest member of the team maintaining his position with the kind of professional calm that had earned him a place among the world's most elite operators despite his relative youth. No movement, no contacts, no anything. Price lowered his rifle slightly, his tactical mind processing information that refused to make sense. No hostiles, no crates, no chemical signatures on his portable detector. Just emptiness in a facility that intelligence had flagged as active within the last 6 hours. "Something's wrong," he said into the comm, not bothering to hide his assessment. His team didn't need false confidence. They needed accurate threat evaluation. "I noticed that myself," Soap replied, descending from his elevated position with the controlled movement of someone who'd spent a decade perfecting close-quarters combat. Intel said this place should be crawling with guards and enough Nova 6 to flatten a city. "We've got fuck all." "Could be a trap," Gaz suggested, his weapon still tracking potential threat vectors despite the apparent emptiness. "Lure us in. Spring it once we're committed." "Then where's the spring?" Ghost countered, his voice carrying that distinctive rumble that made interrogation subjects nervous even before he started asking questions. "No tripwires, no pressure plates, no position charges, just—" He stopped mid-sentence. Price felt it simultaneously. The air changed. Not temperature, not humidity. Something deeper, more fundamental. Like the moment before a thunderstorm when atmospheric pressure shifted and every animal instinct humans still possessed started screaming warnings about incoming danger. The warehouse lights, already dim emergency lighting, flickered. Once. Twice. Price's radio crackled with interference that sounded wrong. Not jamming, not equipment failure, just static that carried harmonics his trained ear couldn't identify. "Price to Laswell," he transmitted, maintaining professional calm despite the growing unease. "Radio check, confirm our position and provide exfil timeline." Static. "Laswell, this is Price. Radio check." Nothing. His GPS device, military grade, satellite linked, designed to function in conditions ranging from Arctic tundra to desert sandstorms, displayed coordinates that flickered and scrambled like a computer experiencing cascade failure. The thermal imaging on his optics spiked violently, showing heat signatures that couldn't exist. The entire warehouse interior reading at temperatures that would have melted steel, then dropping to absolute zero, then normalizing in the span of half a second. "Anyone else seeing this?" Soap asked, his weapon tracking erratically as his own equipment experienced similar failures. "Aye," Ghost confirmed. "Thermal's gone barmy." GPS is reading our position as can't even tell. Numbers don't make sense. Then the warehouse walls shimmered. Not metaphorically. Actually shimmered. Like reality itself had skipped a frame in whatever film it was projecting. The concrete walls became translucent for a fraction of a second, showing impossible vistas beyond. Cities that weren't European architecture, skies that were the wrong color, spaces that existed in geometries Price's brain rejected as physically impossible. Every man in Task Force 141 felt it simultaneously. That combat instinct honed through years of operations in the world's most hostile environments. The recognition that something catastrophic was occurring and they were in the center of it without any ability to prevent or control it. Something had moved them, not physically, not through conventional means, but moved them nonetheless. The shimmer effect intensified for 3 full seconds, long enough for Price to see Ghost reaching for a fragmentation grenade in pure tactical reflex, for Soap to drop into a defensive crouch, for Gaz to establish fields of fire that would cover all potential threat vectors. Then it stopped. The warehouse resolved back into solid concrete and steel. The lights stabilized. The impossible thermal readings normalized, but Price's radio remained dead. His GPS still scrambled. And when he checked his watch, an analog military timepiece specifically chosen because it didn't rely on electronic systems, the second hand was moving backward. For 2 full seconds, it ticked counterclockwise, then resumed normal function. "Fuck," Soap whispered, staring at his own watch, experiencing the same temporal distortion. "Everyone check your gear," Price ordered, his voice carrying absolute authority despite circumstances that defied every operational parameter he'd trained for. Weapons, ammunition, equipment, full accounting. Now. They conducted the check with professional efficiency. 4 operators verifying that their weapons remained functional, their ammunition counts accurate, their tactical equipment intact. Everything was present and accounted for, which somehow made the situation worse. Because whatever had just happened, whatever impossible phenomenon they'd experienced, hadn't been an attack, hadn't stripped them of capabilities, hadn't done anything except move them. The question was where and why. "We exit tactical," Price decided. "Standard dispersal pattern, weapons ready but not raised unless we identify hostile intent. Whatever just happened, we don't know if we're still in friendly territory or if—" "Cap," Ghost interrupted, his sniper's eye catching something through the warehouse's grimy windows. "You need to see this." Price moved to Ghost's position, looking through the reinforced glass at the world beyond the warehouse. Europe was gone. The industrial complex they'd infiltrated had been located along the northern coast, with clear sight lines to cargo facilities and shipping infrastructure that characterized modern European logistics operations. Familiar architecture, recognizable urban planning, the kind of terrain Price had operated in for 3 decades. What lay beyond the window now was something else entirely. The skyline was denser, taller, buildings that reached toward the sky with architectural designs that mixed familiar modern construction with elements Price couldn't immediately categorize. And everywhere, covering nearly every visible surface, neon signs displaying Japanese kanji characters. "That's not Europe," Gaz said quietly, stating the obvious because someone had to acknowledge what they were all seeing. "That's not anywhere I recognize," Soap added, his tactical brain clearly working through the implications. "Those buildings, the construction style, it's Japanese but wrong somehow. Too clean, too organized." Price pulled a compact set of binoculars from his kit, focusing on the streets below the warehouse. What he saw made him lower the optics slowly, his tactical mind struggling to process information that violated everything he understood about reality. Civilians walked the streets below, ordinary people going about their business, except a man in a business suit stopped at a street corner, raised his hand, and ignited his palm into flame, actual fire emerging from human tissue, to light the cigarette dangling from his mouth, then extinguished the flame as casually as switching off a lighter. A child, couldn't have been more than 6 years old, jumped off a park bench and floated. actually floated 3 feet above the pavement before landing with giggling delight while his mother watched with the kind of casual attention parents gave to completely normal childhood behavior. A woman crossing the street had skin that shimmered like polished steel, reflecting the afternoon sunlight with metallic gleam that couldn't be makeup or costume. It was her actual skin, transformed, enhanced, impossible. "Ghost," Price said carefully. "Tell me you're seeing what I'm seeing." "People with superpowers," Ghost replied with his characteristic bluntness. "Yeah, seeing it, not believing it, but seeing it." Price handed the binoculars to Soap, who took one look and muttered something in Gaelic that probably wasn't complimentary. "This is impossible," Gaz said, his analytical mind clearly trying to find rational explanations for irrational observations. "Superpowers aren't real. People can't just ignite fire from their hands or fly or turn their skin to metal. It's what we're looking at," Price interrupted. "Which means either we're experiencing mass hallucination, unlikely given our training, or something has fundamentally changed about our situation. We adapt or we die. Right now, adaptation means gathering intelligence." He moved toward the warehouse's main entrance, his team falling into tactical formation automatically. Years of operations together had created communication that transcended words. They moved as a single organism, 4 parts of one lethal whole. The warehouse exterior confirmed what Price had feared. They weren't in Europe anymore. The industrial signage nearby displayed Japanese characters that Price's limited language training could partially translate. He pulled out his tactical tablet, which, despite the earlier equipment failures, was now functioning normally, and activated its translation software. Musutafu, Industrial District, Japan. Except not the Japan Price had operated in during joint exercises with the Japanese self-defense forces. This was different. The architecture was simultaneously familiar and alien. The technology visible in the distance, those elevated highways that crisscrossed the skyline like transportation infrastructure designed by someone who'd never worried about conventional engineering limitations, suggested advancement beyond anything Price had seen. "We've been moved," he said aloud, making the assessment official. "Unknown mechanism, unknown distance. We're in Japan, or somewhere that looks like Japan, but it's not our Japan. Those people down there have abilities that shouldn't exist. Which means..." Ghost knelt suddenly near the warehouse loading dock, his attention focused on something Price couldn't immediately see. The lieutenant moved with predatory precision, examining the concrete surface with the kind of intensity he usually reserved for analyzing ballistic impact patterns. "Got something," Ghost said. Price joined him, looking at what Ghost's trained eye had spotted. Tire tracks, fresh. The tread pattern was deep, suggesting heavy vehicles, probably commercial trucks, and the tracks were recent enough that Price could see where they'd displaced dust and small debris within the last few hours. But that wasn't what Ghost was focused on. Beside the tire tracks, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for, was a faint chemical residue. Barely detectable. The kind of trace evidence that standard forensics might miss, but that operators trained in NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, warfare recognized instantly. Price pulled his portable chemical analyzer from his tactical vest. Military grade, designed to identify everything from sarin gas to weaponized anthrax. He scraped a sample of the residue, loaded it into the analyzer, and waited while the device ran its molecular breakdown. The reading that appeared on the small screen made his blood run cold. Nova 6, variant unknown, molecular stability, 94% standard Nova 6. The Soviet-era nerve agent that had been weaponized and refined over decades had molecular stability around 67% in storage conditions. It degraded rapidly when exposed to standard atmospheric conditions, which made it dangerous but containable if you understood the chemistry. This variant showed 94% stability. Someone had improved it, stabilized it, made it more lethal and longer lasting than anything Price's intelligence network had ever documented. "Fuck me," Soap breathed, reading over Price's shoulder. That's Nova 6, but modified. Someone's been working on it, making it better. Better at killing, Ghost added, his voice flat. Standard Nova 6 can flatten a city block if dispersed correctly. This stabilized version could take out an entire city. Maybe more if atmospheric conditions are right. Price's tactical mind was already processing implications and calculating response strategies. They'd been pursuing Nova 6 intelligence in their reality, had tracked it to this warehouse, had breached expecting to interdict a chemical weapons shipment. Instead, they'd been moved, somehow, impossibly, to another reality entirely. But the Nova 6 was here too, which meant either the chemical weapon had been moved with them, or someone in this reality had acquired it independently, or, the worst option, someone was using the same dimensional transfer mechanism that had moved Task Force 141 to transport chemical weapons between realities. But before Price could vocalize his assessment, sirens wailed in the distance. But they weren't military sirens, weren't police sirens, weren't any emergency response pattern Price recognized from operations across 6 continents. They were hero sirens. Gaz spotted it first. Contact, 2 o'clock, single individual, moving fast, airborne. Price tracked the indicated vector, his tactical assessment systems immediately categorizing threat level. A figure descended from the sky, not with aircraft or propulsion system, but through what appeared to be controlled flight or jump capability that defied physics. He landed at the far end of the street with enough force to crack the asphalt, creating a small crater that would have required industrial equipment to produce. The impact should have shattered every bone in a normal human body. This person stood up from it like he'd stepped off a curb. He was tall, muscular, wearing what Price's brain initially categorized as a costume, but quickly reassessed as some kind of reinforced uniform. A flowing cape, tactically useless but apparently meaningful in this context. Sharp eyes that immediately scanned the area with the kind of trained awareness Price recognized in fellow professionals. A pro-hero. Price's tactical tablet had automatically accessed local networks, which shouldn't have been possible, but apparently this reality's infrastructure was more open than anything from their world, and was displaying basic information about the public figure standing 50 meters away. Behind the hero, civilians had stopped to stare. But they weren't staring at the man who'd just fallen from the sky and cracked pavement. They were staring at Task Force 141, foreign military operators in full tactical gear. Weapons that, Price suddenly realized, were completely illegal in this reality's Japan. Body armor that marked them as military combatants in what appeared to be a civilian zone. "We've got a problem," Gaz muttered, his weapon lowered but ready. "Those civilians are recording us. See the phones?" Price counted 17 people openly filming them with mobile devices, which meant in approximately 30 seconds, images of 4 unknown armed soldiers would be spreading across whatever social media infrastructure this world used. The pro-hero's eyes narrowed. His posture shifted. Not aggressive yet, but ready. Prepared. Price made a command decision. He lowered his rifle completely, letting it hang from its sling, and raised both hands to shoulder height in a universal gesture of non-aggression. Behind him, his team followed suit with the kind of synchronized precision that came from operating together for years. "Gaz," Price said quietly, his lips barely moving. "You speak any Japanese?" "Enough to order a beer and ask for directions," Gaz replied. "Not enough to explain why 4 heavily armed soldiers just appeared in Musutafu." "Then we're doing this the hard way," Price decided. He raised his voice, projecting clearly toward the pro-hero while maintaining his non-threatening posture. "We are not hostile. We are military operators from Task Force 141. We've experienced an unknown translocation event and require contact with the local authorities. We have information about an imminent chemical weapons threat in this city." The pro-hero's expression didn't change, but Price saw recognition flicker in his eyes at the words, "chemical weapons." This person understood English and understood threat assessment. Price pressed his advantage. "Nova 6, nerve agent, weaponized chemical capable of mass casualties. We tracked it to this location. We found residue, which means someone in this city has acquired a weapon of mass destruction, and we have approximately... He checked his watch, calculating based on standard terrorist deployment timelines. 72 hours before they deploy it in a populated area. We need to speak with whoever handles major threat response. Now. The pro-hero stood motionless for 3 full seconds, clearly processing information and calculating responses. Then he moved. Not toward them. Toward his communication device, some kind of advanced earpiece that definitely wasn't standard equipment from Price's reality. The hero spoke rapidly in Japanese. Price caught maybe 1 word in 5 with his limited language training, but the tone was clear, reporting to higher authority, requesting guidance, describing the situation. Gaz muttered, "We're not in Kansas anymore." "No," Price agreed quietly, his eyes tracking the pro-hero's body language while simultaneously monitoring the growing crowd of civilians recording everything. "We're somewhere worse. We're in a world where people have superpowers and we don't, where our weapons and training might not be enough, where we're outgunned in ways we've never experienced." "But," Soap prompted, because he knew his captain well enough to hear the unspoken continuation. "But," Price continued, "we're also in a world where someone just transported a weapon of mass destruction, a weapon we understand better than anyone here, which means despite being outgunned and out of our depth..." Ghost finished the thought. "We're the only ones who can stop it." Price allowed himself a grim smile behind his tactical beard. "Exactly. Unknown world, unknown rules, but war. War we know. And if Nova 6 exists here, the war came with us." The pro-hero finished his communication and turned back to face them, his expression unreadable but his posture suggesting a decision had been made. "You will come with me," he said in accented but clear English. "No resistance, no weapons fire. You will be escorted to authorities who will determine your status and verify your claims. If you are hostile..." "We're not," Price interrupted. "We're soldiers. We follow rules of engagement. We don't fire unless fired upon. And right now, we've got bigger problems than jurisdiction disputes. Nova 6 doesn't care about which reality it's in. It just kills. Everything, everyone. We stop it or this city dies. That's simple." The pro-hero studied them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we have mutual interest. Come, and pray to whatever gods you believe in that you're telling the truth. Because if you're not..." He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. Price had seen the casual display of strength when this man landed, had watched pavement crack under impact that should have required explosives. They were outmatched in raw power, but they were also the only ones who understood what Nova 6 could do. And in war, knowledge was its own kind of weapon. Task Force 141 moved out, following the pro-hero toward whatever authority in this reality handled threats to public safety. Behind them, the warehouse sat empty. The tire tracks remained. The chemical residue slowly degraded in the afternoon sun. And somewhere in Musu Tafu, someone was preparing to deploy a weapon that could kill millions. The clock was ticking. If you want to see what happens when the world's most elite soldiers meet a world of superpowers, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me which Task Force 141 member would survive longest in the MHA universe. The mission has begun. May the Force be with you. The escort to what the pro-hero called UA High School took 40 minutes through streets that made Price's tactical assessment systems scream warnings about compromised operational security. They traveled in an unmarked vehicle, civilian model, but reinforced in ways that suggested government or Hero Commission modification. The pro-hero who'd made contact identified himself as Manuel, a water manipulation specialist operating in Musutafu's industrial district. He sat in the front passenger seat, his posture relaxed, but his eyes constantly tracking them through the rear-view mirror. Professional, cautious, smart. Price could respect that. Ghost sat directly behind the driver, his position allowing him immediate control of the vehicle if circumstances required. Soap occupied the opposite side, his tactical positioning creating crossfire angles if things went sideways. Gaz maintained rear security, his eyes tracking their route with the kind of photographic memory that made him invaluable for exfiltration planning. And Price sat in the middle, his mind processing everything they passed. The civilians on the streets moved with casual confidence despite, or perhaps because of, their superpowers. A construction worker lifted steel beams that should have required a crane. A street vendor served food while small flames danced across his fingertips for cooking. Children played in a park, some of them floating, others demonstrating abilities that defied physics. Over 80% of the population, Manuel had explained during the drive, possessed what they called Quirks, and superhuman abilities that manifested around age 4 and ranged from minor cosmetic changes to powers that could level buildings. Task Force 141 possessed exactly 0 Quirks. They had training, experience, weapons, tactics. Against a population where a random civilian might have bulletproof skin or the ability to generate explosions from their palms, that suddenly felt inadequate. "This UA place," Price said, breaking the silence with tactical inquiry. "What is it exactly?" Manuel glanced back. "The most prestigious hero academy in Japan. We're taking you there because the principal, Nezu, is one of the few individuals cleared to handle potential national security threats involving unknown foreign military forces. Plus, several top pro heroes are on staff. If you're telling the truth about Nova 6, then they'll have the resources to verify and respond. If you're lying." He didn't finish the threat. The implication was clear enough. "We're not lying," Price replied flatly. "I've been a soldier for 30 years. Fought in conflicts across 6 continents, handled more chemical weapon situations than I care to count. Nova 6 is real, it's here, and if someone deploys it in this city, your quirks won't matter. Dead is dead, regardless of superpowers." Manuel's expression shifted slightly. Not quite belief, but recognition that Price spoke with the certainty of experience rather than deception. The vehicle turned into what appeared to be a massive educational campus. Sprawling grounds, multiple buildings, architecture that mixed traditional Japanese design with ultra-modern construction. And everywhere, and security measures that Price's trained eye immediately cataloged. Reinforced walls, strategic camera placement, defensive positions that could be activated rapidly, emergency response infrastructure that suggested this school had been attacked before and had learned from the experience. "UA has been targeted by villains multiple times," Manuel explained, apparently reading Price's tactical assessment. "League of Villains, Paranormal Liberation Front, others. The school takes security seriously now." "Smart," Ghost commented from his position. "Nothing teaches defensive strategy better than someone trying to kill your students." They were led through security checkpoints that made airport screening look casual. Metal detectors, which went ballistic when Task Force 141 walked through carrying enough weapons to outfit a small army, or quirk detection systems that apparently measured superhuman abilities and flagged them as 0 detected across all 4 operators. Biometric scans that failed to match them against any database this reality maintained. By the time they reached the principal's office, Price counted 17 different security protocols they'd triggered, and 17 different pro heroes positioned at strategic intervals throughout the building. They were expected. More accurately, they were contained. The principal's office was surprisingly modest given the scale of the campus. A large desk, comfortable seating, walls lined with books and tactical planning materials. And sitting behind the desk was something that made even Ghost's professional composure slip slightly. An animal, small, white fur, and beady eyes that carried intelligence that was distinctly, unsettlingly human. "Welcome to UA High School," the creature said in perfect Japanese accented English, his paws folding neatly on the desk. "I am Principal Nezu, and you 4 are the most interesting anomaly to appear in my school since the League of Villains attempted to kidnap my students." Price had interrogated warlords, had negotiated with terrorists, had stared down enemy combatants across a dozen different conflict zones. Somehow, This small animal unnerved him more than any of them. "Captain John Price," he introduced, maintaining professional composure. "Task Force 141, British Special Forces. This is Lieutenant Simon Riley, Sergeant John McTavish, and Sergeant Kyle Garrick. We've experienced an unknown translocation event that brought us from our reality to yours. And we have intelligence about an imminent chemical weapons attack on this city." "Nova 6, Nezu said, not as question but as confirmation. "Yes, Manuel relayed your claims. Fascinating. Do sit down, gentlemen. This conversation may take some time." They sat, not because they wanted to, but because tactical assessment suggested cooperation would achieve their objectives faster than confrontation. The door opened behind them. Price didn't turn. Ghost had that angle covered. But he registered the new arrivals through peripheral awareness. Two men entered. One was tall, impossibly thin, with sunken eyes and a presence that seemed diminished somehow, like someone who'd burned too bright and was now fading. The other was shorter, more muscular, with distinctive half-red, half-white hair and a scar over his left eye. "Gentlemen," Nezu gestured to the newcomers, "allow me to introduce All Might, formerly the symbol of peace and the #1 pro-hero, and Shoto Todoroki, one of UA's most promising students. They'll be observing this conversation." Price's tactical tablet had been confiscated during security screening, but his memory was sharp enough. All Might. Even in their reality, intelligence services had monitored Japanese hero activities. All Might's name had appeared in briefs about superhuman assets that could potentially impact global security. This was the man who'd been called the strongest hero in the world. He looked like a strong wind could knock him over. "You'll forgive my appearance," All Might said, apparently reading Price's assessment. "Injury sustained in combat. I can no longer maintain my enhanced form for extended periods. But I assure you," his voice carried quiet steel, "I remain quite capable of neutralizing threats to this school and this city." "We're not a threat," Price replied. "We're soldiers tracking a weapon of mass destruction, one that apparently followed us, or was transported with us, into your reality. We want to stop it. That's all." "Then let's discuss how you arrived here," Nezu said, his small paws pulling up holographic displays that appeared above his desk. Technology that Price's reality wouldn't achieve for another decade at least. "Manuel reported you appeared in the industrial district with full tactical gear, weapons, and no record of entry through any legal channels. Immigration has no documentation, satellite imagery shows nothing. You simply appeared." "How?" Price explained. "Concisely, professionally. The warehouse operation, the intelligence about Nova 6, the breach, the wrongness of the empty facility, the pressure change, the shimmer effect, the equipment failures, exiting to find a completely different reality. He left out nothing that was tactically relevant, kept classified information about Task Force 141's other operations to himself." When he finished, Nezu was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're telling me you experienced spontaneous dimensional translocation, without technology, without warning, just moved from your reality to ours?" "Yes, that's impossible," Todoroki said quietly from his position by the wall. "Quirks can do many things, but reality manipulation on that scale, moving 4 people across dimensional barriers, that's beyond anything documented." "And yet," Ghost replied with his characteristic bluntness, "here we are, which means either we're lying, in which case, what's our objective? What do we gain from this deception? Or we're telling the truth and someone or something has technology or abilities that exceed your documentation." Nezu's eyes gleamed with something that looked disturbingly like excitement. "An excellent point, Lieutenant Riley. If you were infiltrators, this cover story is unnecessarily complex. If you were villains, you would have already acted, which suggests, pending verification of your claims, that you are indeed what you claim to be. Soldiers from another reality. Tracking a weapon you believe threatens my city." "Not believe," Price corrected. "No, I saw the chemical residue, analyzed it. Nova 6 variant with 94% molecular stability. That's not theoretical. That's not possibility. That's confirmed threat requiring immediate response. Show me, Nezu said simply. Price pulled out the portable analyzer. The security team had confiscated his weapons, but apparently hadn't recognized the small chemical detection device as threat-worthy. He displayed the reading showing Nova 6 molecular signature. Nezu studied it with intensity that made his small animal features seem almost predatory. I don't recognize this compound, but I recognize weapons-grade chemical agents when I see analysis data. All might. The thin man leaned closer, studying the display. If this is accurate. Captain Price, you're describing something that could kill tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands if deployed in densely populated areas with optimal atmospheric conditions. Millions, Price corrected grimly. In your reality, with your population density and the complications introduced by Quirks. Fire-based powers aerosolizing the agent. Enhanced respiratory systems spreading it faster. Panic causing stampedes that increase exposure. This thing gets released in Musutafu? You're looking at citywide extinction event within 72 hours. The room fell silent. You believe someone here has acquired this weapon, Nezu said slowly. Someone who intends to deploy it. Based on what evidence? Tire tracks, Ghost replied. Fresh, heavy vehicles, recent enough to be within the last 6 hours. Someone transported something from that warehouse, something heavy enough to require commercial trucks. And they left Nova 6 residue behind, which means either they're sloppy with containment, possible but unlikely if they've stabilized the compound to 94%, or they're preparing multiple deployment sites and cross-contaminated during transfer. Multiple sites, Todoroki repeated. You think they're planning coordinated attacks? I think, Price said carefully. That's what I would do if I wanted to maximize casualties and minimize hero response effectiveness. Hit 3 or 4 locations simultaneously. Overwhelm emergency response. Create panic that spreads the agent faster. Standard terror tactics adapted for chemical weapons deployment. Soap leaned forward. Question for you lot. In our world, we've got specialized NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, response teams, hazmat protocols, containment procedures. You've got people with superpowers. But do you have experience with weaponized nerve agents that don't care about how strong you are? The silence that followed was answer enough. Quirks give advantages, All Might said slowly. Enhanced durability, healing factors, various immunities, but a chemical weapon that attacks the nervous system. He looked at Nezu. Do we have protocols for that? We have standard hazmat procedures, Nezu replied. But nothing designed for military-grade nerve agents deployed by terrorists with specific intent to maximize casualties. We've always relied on pro-heroes to neutralize threats through direct engagement. Chemical weapons that can't be punched or burned or frozen. His small paws tapped the desk thoughtfully. That's a weakness in our response infrastructure. It's the weakness, Price corrected. You've built a society around individual power. Around heroes who can fly and shoot fire and turn their skin to diamond. But you've neglected the unglamorous reality that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't the ones you can fight directly. Sometimes it's invisible, tasteless, odorless, and by the time you realize you've been exposed, you're already dying. Gaz added quietly. In our world, we learned that lesson the hard way. Chemical weapons don't care about rank or training or how tough you are. They just kill, which is why we developed specialized responses. Containment over confrontation, prevention over reaction. The unsexy work of stopping attacks before they happen. And you have experience with this Nova 6 specifically, Nezu observed. We've tracked it across 3 continents, Price confirmed. Stopped 2 deployment attempts, lost good soldiers learning how it works and how to counter it. This isn't theoretical knowledge. This is blood-bought expertise, and we're offering it to you because that weapon being here, that's our responsibility. We were tracking it. It moved with us or because of us, which means we finish what we started. All Might straightened slightly, his diminished form somehow carrying authority anyway. You're proposing collaboration, your expertise in exchange for our support in this reality. I'm proposing we stop pretending jurisdiction matters when we're talking about millions of potential casualties, Price replied bluntly. You don't know how to fight this threat. We do. We don't know how to operate in your reality. You do. We combine capabilities or we fail separately. That's simple. Nezu was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between the 4 operators and his own staff. Then, All Might, your assessment. They're soldiers, All Might said simply. I've worked with military forces before. I recognize the mindset, the discipline, the focus on mission over personal glory. And Captain Price is correct. If this Nova 6 exists and someone intends to deploy it, we're unprepared. Our hero response infrastructure isn't designed for invisible threats that can't be defeated through direct combat. Todoroki? The student with the distinctive hair considered carefully. They're telling the truth. Or they believe they're telling the truth, which amounts to the same thing operationally. And their tactical knowledge is clearly extensive. The way they position themselves during transport, covering fields of fire, maintaining security, preparing for potential hostile action. That's professional military training, not villain behavior. Then we have a decision to make, Nezu said, his small paws folding again. Do we detain 4 unknown foreign military operators who appeared mysteriously in our reality? Or do we accept their expertise and risk the complications that come from collaborating with individuals who operate outside our legal framework? Before anyone could answer, an alarm shrieked through the building. Not a drill. Price recognized real emergency alerts when he heard them. Nezu's desk display changed, showing video feed from somewhere in the city. A commercial district, crowds of civilians, and in the center of the crowd, smoke. Green-tinged smoke spreading from canisters that had been strategically positioned to maximize atmospheric dispersal. People were collapsing, convulsing, dying. What is that? All Might demanded, his voice carrying horror. Price was already moving, his tactical brain processing the deployment pattern, the atmospheric conditions, the crowd density. That's Nova 6, modified deployment. Timed release. They've started the attack. But you said 72 hours. I said that standard terrorist timeline, Price corrected, his voice hard. I didn't say these particular terrorists would follow standard procedures. Whoever's doing this, they're smarter than I gave them credit for. They heard about our arrival, probably through social media or hero networks, and accelerated their timeline. They're deploying now because they know we're the only ones who can stop them. Nezu's expression shifted from academic curiosity to cold calculation. Can you stop this? We can try, Price replied. But we need equipment, access to the city, and we need you to keep your heroes from trying to help in ways that make it worse. Fire-based powers near Nova 6. That aerosolizes it further. Water-based powers? That spreads the liquid form. Wind-based? That's literally the worst thing you could do. Your heroes go in without proper containment protocols. They don't save people, they kill more. All Might looked at Nezu. Principal, do it, Nezu decided. Give them what they need. Captain Price, you have command authority for this operation. Our heroes will follow your tactical guidance. But understand, if you're wrong, if this is some kind of deception, I will personally ensure you never leave this reality. Clear? Clear, Price confirmed. Now someone get us our weapons back and transportation to that deployment site. We've got maybe 10 minutes before that green smoke spreads beyond containable limits. After that, we're looking at citywide casualties. They moved, not as visitors or detainees or anomalies, as soldiers, because that's what they were, in any reality, against any threat. Task Force 141 had a mission. Stop Nova 6, save the city, and maybe, just maybe, find out who the hell had brought chemical weapons into a world of superheroes. The clock was ticking, and people were dying. The tactical transport provided by UA was fast. Hero commission vehicle, reinforced chassis, engine that pushed speeds Price hadn't seen outside of military-grade equipment. They made the 8-kilometer distance to the commercial district in 4 minutes, ghost driving with the kind of aggressive precision that came from years of hot extractions under fire. Price used those 4 minutes efficiently. Soap equipment check. I need confirmation on what we've got for NBC response. Recovered our full kit from security, Soap replied, inventorying with rapid efficiency. 4 sets of CBRN protective gear, atropine injectors, 6 doses each, portable decon units, sealed rebreathers rated for nerve agents, and he paused. They gave us something extra. Hero Commission hazmat equipment, more advanced than our stuff. Looks like it's designed for Quirk-enhanced users, but should work for us. Test it, Price ordered. Gaz, what's our communication situation? Patched into Hero Commission emergency frequencies, Gaz reported, working a tablet that Nezu had provided. Technology that made standard military equipment look like toys. I've got direct links to Pro Hero Dispatch, Emergency Services, and UA's Tactical Coordination Center. Principal Nezu is monitoring. Says he's coordinating hero response to keep them back from the contamination zone until we establish containment protocols. Ghost, route analysis. 3 possible approach vectors. Ghost replied without taking his eyes off the road, his tactical brain processing geography he'd only seen for minutes. Main Avenue, fastest but most exposed. Side streets, slower but provides cover. Underground access through subway system, risky, but puts us below the atmospheric dispersal layer. Underground, Price decided immediately. Nova 6 is heavier than air initially, but atmospheric conditions will create updrafts that spread it vertically. We go below. We avoid the primary dispersal zone and approach from unexpected vector. Villains, or whoever's doing this, will expect hero response from street level. The vehicle screeched to a halt outside a subway entrance 3 blocks from the attack site. They exited tactical, weapons ready, CBRN gear deploying with practiced efficiency. Price had donned chemical warfare equipment in a dozen different hostile environments. This was faster. The Hero Commission gear integrated seamlessly. Full body protection, sealed system, heads-up display showing atmospheric analysis in real time. And the readings were catastrophic. Jesus Christ, Soap breathed, staring at his HUD. Atmospheric concentration is already at lethal levels. Anyone caught in that initial deployment is already dead. We're looking at secondary spread now. How many casualties? Gaz asked quietly. Price checked the video feeds Nezu was streaming to their displays. The commercial district had been crowded. Mid-afternoon shopping, civilians going about their daily routines. When the canisters deployed, there had been maybe 300 people in immediate contamination radius. Now there were bodies, people who'd been walking, talking, living, now convulsing on the ground as their nervous systems shut down. Some had tried to run, made it maybe 20 meters before collapse. Others had attempted to help the fallen and been contaminated themselves. A few with physical enhancement, quirks were lasting longer, but lasting longer just meant dying slower. Too many, Price said flatly. And it'll be more if we don't contain this. Move out. Standard NBC protocol. No one removes protective gear for any reason. You feel symptoms, difficulty breathing, vision problems, muscle spasms. You inject atropine immediately and fall back. Understood? Understood, his team replied in unison. They entered the subway system and immediately encountered their first complication. Civilians, dozens of them, fleeing underground to escape the green smoke spreading through the streets above. Panicked, terrified, and completely unprotected. Bloody hell, Ghost muttered. They're running straight into secondary contamination. The smoke's going to sink into the subway system within minutes. Price made a tactical decision that went against every operational instinct he had. We established temporary containment here. Gaz, contact Hero Commission. We need heroes with barrier quirks establishing sealed zones. Anyone with air manipulation capabilities creating positive pressure to keep contaminated atmosphere out. And we need medical teams with atropine ready for anyone showing symptoms. On it, Gaz confirmed, already transmitting coordinates and requirements. A pro-hero arrived within 90 seconds. A woman with crystalline structures growing from her arms, her quirk apparently allowing her to create transparent barriers. She looked young, maybe early 20s, and absolutely terrified. "You're the soldiers from another world," she said, her voice shaking. "They said you know how to fight this, how to stop it. We do, Price confirmed. What's your name and capability? Crystal Weave. I can create barriers, transparent structures. They're airtight if I concentrate. Then concentrate, Price ordered, his voice carrying absolute authority. I need a sealed barrier across this subway entrance, airtight, strong enough to hold against panic crowds. Can you do that? Yes, I think so. Don't think, do. People are dying because they're breathing contaminated air. You stop that air from reaching them. You save lives. Focus on that, not on the fear, on the mission. She straightened slightly, Price's command presence cutting through her panic. Her hands moved, and crystalline structures began forming across the subway entrance. Beautiful, intricate, and most importantly, airtight. Good, Price acknowledged. Hold that. Don't let anyone through until we've cleared the contamination above. Gaz, she's got this position. Mark it as safe zone for civilian evacuation. They moved deeper into the subway system, their atmospheric sensors tracking Nova 6 concentrations that were beginning to seep through ventilation systems. The green-tinged smoke was visible now, tendrils of death creeping through the underground infrastructure like some kind of malevolent fog. There, Ghost said, pointing to a maintenance access that led back to street level. That puts us 2 blocks from primary deployment site. We go up, we're in the kill zone. Then that's where we go, Price replied. Soap, what's your assessment on deployment mechanism? Soap had been studying the video feeds, his demolitions expertise analyzing the canisters visible in the footage. Timed release, professional job. Canisters are positioned for maximum atmospheric dispersal. Altitude suggests they were placed at chest height, optimal for initial spread before gravity takes over. And cap. He highlighted something on the video feed. Look at the placement pattern. It's not random, it's calculated. Whoever did this knows fluid dynamics, knows atmospheric conditions. This is military-level planning. So we're not dealing with typical villains, Gaz observed. No, Price agreed grimly. We're dealing with someone who understands chemical weapons deployment. Someone with training. Someone who... His tactical radio crackled. Nezu's voice came through, calm despite the catastrophe unfolding. Captain Price, I'm detecting additional Nova 6 signatures. 3 more locations across the city, all deploying simultaneously. This isn't a single attack, it's coordinated. Fuck, Ghost said with feeling. They're hitting multiple sites, overwhelming response capabilities, standard terror tactics. Price's mind raced through tactical options. 4 operators, 4 deployment sites. They could split up, 1 per site, but that violated every principle of team tactics and left each operator vulnerable. Or they could focus on one site and accept casualties at the others. Neither option was acceptable. Nezu, I need hero support. Not for containment. That'll just spread it worse. I need intel. I need surveillance on those other deployment sites, cameras, sensors. Anything that tells us if these are automated releases or if there's someone on site managing them. Checking now, Nezu replied. 15 seconds passed. Then, Captain, I'm detecting movement at the secondary site. Human figures, not fleeing, approaching the canisters. They appear to be adjusting them, modifying the release rate. They're still on site, Price said, understanding flooding through him. They're not just deploying and running. They're staying to optimize the spread, which means they're either suicidal or they have protection we haven't identified. Or, Soap suggested darkly, they've got the same CBRN gear we do, which means they knew this was coming and planned accordingly. Price made the call. We hit the site with active management. We stopped the people controlling the deployment. We stopped the spread. The automated sites will exhaust their canister capacity within 30 minutes. Casualties will be catastrophic but contained. The managed sites, those can keep pumping Nova 6 into the atmosphere for hours if we don't shut them down. They moved. Up through the maintenance access, into streets that looked like something from a nightmare. The green smoke had spread beyond the initial deployment radius, creating a fog bank that consumed entire city blocks. And everywhere, bodies. Civilians who'd been caught in the initial release. Heroes who'd tried to respond and been contaminated before they understood the threat. Price saw a pro-hero with fire-based quirk. His entire body wreathed in flames, collapsed against a building. He'd tried to burn away the contaminated air, had instead aerosolized the liquid Nova-6 particles, and creating a thermal dispersal that spread it faster. The road to hell was paved with good intentions. "Target sight ahead," Ghost reported, his sniper scope tracking through the contaminated atmosphere. "I've got visual on 3 hostiles, adult males, wearing protective gear similar to ours. They're positioned around the primary canister cluster, and Cap, they're armed. Assault rifles, military grade. They're not just terrorists, they're soldiers." "Then we're fighting our own kind," Price said grimly. "Rules of engagement?" "They're deploying a weapon of mass destruction in a civilian area," Soap replied, his voice hard. "They've already killed hundreds. Rules of engagement are simple. We stop them. Lethal force authorized?" Price nodded. "Ghost, you've got Overwatch. Find a position with clear sight lines. Take shots when you have them. Soap, Gaz, we're going in direct. Standard 3-man assault. Suppressing fire, close and neutralize." "Questions?" "Just one," Gaz said quietly. "These soldiers. They've got the same training we do, same tactics, same equipment. What makes us think we can beat them?" "Because," Ghost replied, already moving toward his Overwatch position, "we're not fighting for a paycheck or an ideology, or because someone ordered us to. We're fighting because those bastards brought a weapon to a civilian area and used it. That makes them targets, and we've been killing targets for 30 years. They engaged. Ghost's L115A3 barked first. A single shot at 900 meters through contaminated atmosphere that would have made the shot impossible for anyone without his experience. The first hostile's head snapped back, his protective helmet insufficient against .338 Lapua Magnum traveling at supersonic velocity. The other 2 hostiles reacted with professional speed, diving for cover, weapons coming up, returning fire in directions calculated to suppress Ghost's position. They were good. But Price, Soap, and Gaz were better. They'd entered the kill zone from an unexpected vector. Underground approach meant the hostiles had been watching street level, not maintenance access. Price's HK-416 put controlled bursts into the second hostile's position, forcing him into cover that exposed him to Soap's angle. Soap's M4A1 finished what Price started. 3-round center mass. The hostile went down. The third hostile recognized the tactical situation immediately. Outnumbered, outmaneuvered, partners dead. He made the smart choice. He ran toward the canister cluster, toward something Price couldn't see clearly through the contaminated atmosphere. "Ghost, you've got him?" Price transmitted. "Negative. Lost visual in the smoke. He's heading toward..." Ghost's voice changed. "Cap, he's rigging something. Looks like explosive charges attached to the canisters. I think he's going to detonate them, spread the Nova-6 through explosive dispersal instead of slow release." "How much time?" 30 seconds, maybe less." Price ran. Not away. Toward. Through contaminated atmosphere that his protective gear barely filtered. Toward explosive charges that would turn him into red mist if they detonated. Toward a hostile who was preparing to kill thousands more because he'd been backed into a corner. He found the man crouched over the canisters, and hands working some kind of detonator with practiced efficiency. "Step away from the charges," Price ordered, his rifle aimed center mass. The hostile looked up. Through the protective visor, Price could see eyes that carried the kind of cold calculation he recognized from looking in mirrors after particularly dark operations. This wasn't a terrorist. This was someone like him, a soldier, following orders, completing a mission. "Can't do that," the hostile replied in accented English. "Russian," Price's ear told him. "Mission parameters are clear. Maximum dispersal, maximum casualties. You stop me from slow release, I use fast release. Result is the same. You detonate those charges, you die too," Price pointed out. "Your protective gear won't save you from explosive proximity." "I know." The Russian's hands didn't stop working. "Acceptable sacrifice for mission completion. You would understand. We are same, soldiers following orders. Difference is, my orders continue past your intervention." Price's finger tightened on the trigger. "One shot, center mass, Problem solved, except the detonator would trigger on Dead Man's switch. The explosive charges would blow anyway. The Nova 6 would disperse. Standoff. Soap, Price transmitted quietly. I need a solution. Now. Working on it, Cap. Give me 10 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds. Then give me 5 and pray. The Russian smiled behind his visor. Your man cannot help. Charges are proximity fused. He approaches, they detonate. You shoot me, they detonate. I complete the connection, they detonate. Mathematics is simple. This site becomes casualty zone. Well, mission accomplished. Who ordered this? Price demanded, stalling for whatever solution Soap was developing. Who sent you here? What's the objective beyond mass casualties? Same objective it always is, the Russian replied. Chaos, destabilization, proof that even in a world with superheroes, traditional warfare still works. Your Task Force 141 understands this. Why else would you be here? We're here to stop you. You are here because same phenomenon that moved you moved weapon. Someone opened door between realities. Someone wanted both worlds to understand what happens when modern warfare meets superhuman population. This, he gestured to the contaminated atmosphere. This is lesson. Heroes cannot stop everything. Sometimes quiet poison wins where loud power fails. Cap. Soap's voice cut through the philosophical discussion. I've got a shot. Detonator's electromagnetic trigger. I can jam the frequency. Won't stop him from manually detonating, but it'll give us maybe 3 seconds before he realizes signal's blocked. Do it, Price ordered. Soap's portable jammer activated. The Russian's hands moved toward manual backup. Ghost's rifle cracked. Not at the Russian. At the detonator in his hands. Impossible shot. 900 meters through contaminated atmosphere, targeting a device the size of a mobile phone held in moving hands. The detonator shattered. The Russian stared at his empty hands for 1 full second of shocked realization. Then Price shot him. 3 rounds. Center mass. Professional. Efficient. Necessary. The hostile dropped. The charges remained inactive. Clear, Price transmitted. Hostile down. Charges neutralized. Someone get a disposal team here to safely remove these canisters before... The ground shook. Not from explosives. From something else. Something massive moving beneath the street. The asphalt cracked. Buckled. Something was emerging. What the fuck is that? Gaz demanded, his weapon tracking movement that didn't make sense. What emerged from beneath the street was organic. Massive. Some kind of creature or construct, or, Price's brain struggled to categorize it, quirk manifestation on a scale he hadn't seen yet. It was reptilian. Easily 6 meters tall, covered in armored scales that looked like they could shrug off rifle fire. And riding on its back, controlling it like some kind of kaiju cavalry. Eyes was a figure wearing a gas mask that definitely wasn't CBRN protective equipment. A villain. Had to be. Nobody in any reality wore a costume like that unless they wanted to be recognized as a threat. Heroes, the figure bellowed. His voice amplified through some kind of speaker system. You think you've won? You've stopped one site, but the other 3 are still dispersing, and now you face the might of... Ghost shot him. Right through the monologue. Center mass. Professional reflex that had no patience for theatrical villainy. The figure stumbled backward off his monster mount, clutching his chest where the .338 Lapua had penetrated. The creature beneath him roared, a sound that shook windows 3 blocks away, and turned toward Ghost's position with predatory focus. Brilliant, Ghost transmitted dryly. Now I've got a bloody dinosaur coming at me. Fall back, Price ordered. This is beyond our capability. We need... Pro-heroes arrived like something from an action movie. A man with engines in his legs moving faster than Price could track. A woman with creation quirk generating nets that shouldn't have been possible without industrial equipment. Someone with ice powers creating barriers that actually stopped the creature's charge. And at the center of them, coordinating with practiced efficiency. Students, teenagers in hero costumes, moving with training that Price recognized as professional despite their age. UA students, Gaz identified, checking the tactical feed Nezu was streaming. Class 1A, they're the ones who fought villains before, multiple times. The green-haired kid, Midoriya, he's got the same power All Might used to have. They're children, Price said flatly. They're soldiers, Ghost corrected, watching through his scope as the students engaged the creature with coordinated tactics that would have impressed Special Forces operators. Just like we were once. Different uniform, same war. The battle was brief but intense. The creature was strong, could shrug off attacks that would have leveled buildings. But the students adapted, used teamwork, created opportunities for the one with the sonic scream quirk to shatter its armored scales, for the one with the acid quirk to weaken its structural integrity, for Midoriya to deliver a punch that sent it crashing through 2 buildings. When it was over, the creature dissipated. Apparently, it had been a quirk manifestation rather than real animal, vanishing when its controller's concentration failed. The villain who'd been riding it was unconscious, bleeding from Ghost's shot, but alive. And the Nova 6 canisters remained active at 3 other sites across the city. Price checked his tactical display. Casualties climbing, contamination spreading, time running out. Nezu, he transmitted. We need to coordinate. We can't hit 3 sites simultaneously with 4 operators. I need hero support, but controlled support. People who will follow tactical guidance instead of improvising. Can you provide that? Already assembling teams, Nezu replied. Sending you the most experienced students and pro-heroes who understand NBC protocol. Captain Price, we're learning, adapting, using your expertise. But we're running out of time. Those other sites, we'll handle them, Price interrupted. But we do it smart. No improvisation, no heroic sacrifices. Just professional execution. Clear. Clear. Task Force 141 moved out. Toward the next site, the next battle, the next opportunity to stop chemical weapons from killing thousands. Behind them, the bodies remained. Proof that even in a world of superheroes, sometimes the quietest threats were the deadliest. And that sometimes soldiers from another reality were exactly what you needed. The 2nd and 3rd deployment sites fell within 90 minutes. Not cleanly, not without casualties, but they fell. Site 2 was in a residential district. Apartment complexes, schools, parks where children had been playing before the green smoke started spreading. Price coordinated with pro-hero Endeavor, the current #1 hero, a man whose fire-based quirk made him a walking liability around Nova 6, but whose tactical understanding exceeded most heroes Price had encountered. No flames, Price had ordered over the tactical channel. I don't care if you can burn at temperatures that rival the sun. 1 spark near aerosolized Nova 6, and you turn 3 city blocks into a crematorium. You provide perimeter security, keep civilians back, let my team handle the canisters. Endeavor had bristled, and Price could hear it in the silence on the comm. This was a man used to leading, used to being the strongest person in any engagement, used to solving problems through overwhelming application of force. I am the #1 hero, Endeavor had replied, his voice carrying barely controlled irritation. I don't take orders from foreign military. You do today, Price interrupted with the kind of absolute authority that came from commanding men in life or death situations for 3 decades. Because I've handled Nova 6 deployments in 6 different countries. I've seen what happens when someone tries to burn it away. I've written casualty reports for entire villages that died because a well-meaning soldier thought fire would solve the problem. You want to help? Follow my instructions. You want to be a hero? Save lives by not making this worse. The comm had gone silent for 5 seconds. Then, understood. Perimeter security only. No flame use near contamination zone. They'd cleared Site 2 using methodical chemical warfare protocols. Sealed containers, careful extraction, controlled deactivation of the deployment mechanisms. Soap's demolitions expertise proved invaluable, his hands steady as he disarmed timed releases that would have killed thousands. 23 civilian casualties. Tragic, unacceptable. But compared to the hundreds who would have died if the site had remained active, Price had learned long ago not to dwell on mathematics of death. You saved who you could. You mourned later. Right now, there was still work. Site 3 was underground, literally. Someone had placed canisters in the subway system's central junction, and where 6 different lines intersected, and where atmospheric conditions would spread Nova 6 through the entire underground network within hours. They'd gone in with UA students this time. Nezu's assessment that these particular teenagers had more combat experience against unconventional threats than most pro-heroes. A girl named Yaoyorozu with creation quirk that let her manufacture the specialized containment equipment Soap needed. A boy named Kirishima, whose hardening ability let him physically handle contaminated materials without risk of exposure. And Midoriya, the green-haired kid with All Might's power and a tactical mind that reminded Price uncomfortably of young soldiers he'd trained who'd later died in places whose names were still classified. The canisters are pressure-sealed, Midoriya had analyzed, his eyes scanning the deployment setup with frightening speed. If we try to move them directly, the pressure change triggers emergency release. But if we can equalize the atmospheric pressure around them first, then we create a buffer zone that lets us extract safely. Soap finished, recognition and respect clear in his tone. Smart. You've done this before? I've fought villains who use hostages as leverage, Midoriya replied quietly. Same principle. You can't just smash through the problem. You have to think around it. They'd extracted the canisters. All of them. With 0 additional casualties and contamination contained to a single subway platform that could be sealed and decontaminated over the next week. 3 sites down, 1 remained, and that one was going to be the hardest. On Site 4 was in the financial district. Skyscrapers, corporate headquarters, the economic heart of Musu Tafu. And according to Nezu's intelligence, the canisters weren't just on the ground level. They were on the roof of the tallest building, positioned to maximize atmospheric dispersal across the entire downtown corridor. Time to release in. Price checked his tactical display. 17 minutes. We'll never reach them in time, Gaz said, studying the building schematic Nezu had transmitted. That's a 70-story building. Elevators are shut down due to emergency protocols. Stairwell access would take 20 minutes minimum. Even if we had a helicopter for roof insertion, we'd need clearance and coordination that we don't have time for. We've got something better than helicopters, Ghost observed, gesturing to the sky where several pro-heroes were approaching with flight-based quirks. We've got superheroes who can carry us. Price made the call. We need aerial insertion, 4 operators to the roof, fast approach, tactical descent, immediate engagement with hostile forces likely defending the canisters. A pro-hero landed beside them. Hawks, according to the tactical feed. Young, maybe mid-20s. Wearing a costume with massive red wings that shouldn't have provided the lift physics required for human flight, but apparently did anyway. Heard you need an express elevator, Hawks said with the kind of casual confidence that would have annoyed Price if circumstances were different. I can carry 2. There's another flyer inbound who can handle your other 2 guys. We'll have you on that roof in 90 seconds. Defensive capabilities? Price asked, running tactical assessment. If we're engaged during flight, my feathers are controllable independently, Hawks explained, demonstrating by detaching several feathers that floated with apparent sentience. I can provide cover fire while maintaining lift. Plus, I've done aerial combat before. League of Villains attack, Paranormal Liberation Front. I know how to fight while flying. Good enough, Price decided. Soap, Gaz, you're with Hawks. Ghost and I take the second flyer. We hit the roof, establish perimeter, neutralize any hostile forces, and disarm those canisters. 17 minutes. Questions? Just one, Soap said, looking at the wings with professional skepticism. These things rated for carrying full tactical gear? They're rated for carrying me plus 3 civilians during rescue operations, Hawks replied. You'll be fine. Though I gotta say, you guys are a lot calmer about the whole flying with a stranger's quirk thing than most people. We've jumped out of perfectly good aircraft at 30,000 feet, Ghost said flatly. Getting carried by a man with wings is relatively normal by comparison. The ascent was controlled chaos. Price had done helicopter insertions, halo jumps, and combat drops from a dozen different platforms. This was different, personal, almost intimate, being carried through the air by someone whose quirk made physics optional. The wind tore at his tactical gear. The city sprawled below in geometric patterns that would have been beautiful if he'd had time to appreciate them. They reached the roof in 83 seconds and found exactly what Price had expected. Hostile forces, 5 of them, positioned around the canister cluster with professional spacing that suggested military training, armed with assault rifles, wearing CBRN protective gear, ready, waiting. "Contact," Gaz called, already moving to cover as hostile fire opened up the moment their boots hit the roof. The battle was brief and brutal. Price and Ghost had height advantage. Hawks had positioned them above the hostile forces, letting them engage from superior angle. Soap and Gaz took flanking positions, creating crossfire that forced the hostiles into cover that exposed them to each other. Professional versus professional, and training versus training. Experience versus preparation. Task Force 141 had more of both. 4 hostiles down in 30 seconds. The 5th, smarter or more desperate, ran toward the canisters with the same intention the Russian had shown at Site 1. Detonate. Spread through explosive dispersal. Complete the mission even in defeat. Midoriya hit him from above. The teenager had apparently followed them, launched himself from ground level using his quirk to jump 70 stories in a single bound that defied every law of physics Price understood. He crashed into the fleeing hostile with enough force to crack the roof's concrete, his fist glowing with green energy that suggested power output equivalent to artillery. The hostile went down. Hard. Unconscious before he hit the ground. "Told you I could help," Midoriya said, slightly breathless but grinning with the kind of reckless confidence that made Price simultaneously want to commend him and order him to safety. "You disobeyed orders," Price replied, already moving toward the canisters. "You weren't cleared for roof insertion." "You didn't order me not to come," Midoriya countered. "You ordered your team. I'm not your team. I'm a hero student doing what heroes do, helping." Price wanted to argue. Wanted to explain tactical chains of command and operational security and why improvisation got people killed. But they had 9 minutes to disarm chemical weapons. "Soap, talk to me," he ordered instead. Soap was already examining the canister setup, his practiced hands tracing wiring that connected 6 industrial-sized containers to a central detonation mechanism. Sophisticated. These aren't the standard releases we saw at the other sites. These are designed for maximum atmospheric dispersal through explosive force. Someone's been studying our counter-tactics. They knew we'd reach this site eventually, and they prepared. "Can you disarm them?" "Maybe. Give me 5 minutes and absolute silence while I work." Price established perimeter security. Ghost covering the stairwell access, Gaz watching the roof's edge, Hawks providing aerial overwatch, and Midoriya, standing next to Price with that earnest determination that reminded him too much of soldiers who died young. "Why do you do it?" Midoriya asked quietly while Soap worked. "The soldier thing, the risking your life for people you don't know in a world that isn't even yours." "Because," Price replied, watching his sergeant work with the kind of steady precision that made demolitions look easy. "It's the job. Nova 6 exists because someone in our reality weaponized it. Someone transported it here, deliberately or not. That makes it our responsibility. Doesn't matter which reality. Doesn't matter if we know the people we're saving. The weapon is ours. So stopping it is ours too." That's what All Might used to say," Midoriya said. "About responsibility. About how the strongest should protect those who can't protect themselves." "Your All Might sounds like a smart man," Price observed. "Though I notice you said used to." He changed his mind. He got hurt, lost his power, had to retire. Now he teaches instead of fights. Midoriya's voice carried complicated emotions: admiration, grief, determination. "But he taught me that being a hero isn't about the power. It's about the choice. Choosing to help even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when you could walk away." "Kid," Ghost called from his position, "you're describing soldiers. We're just heroes without the costumes and publicity." "Or," Gaz added, "heroes are just soldiers who decided to operate under different rules." "Got it," Soap announced. his hands performing final adjustments to wiring that Price couldn't follow, but trusted absolutely. Detonation sequence disabled. Timed releases neutralized. These canisters are now inert. We can extract them safely for proper disposal. Price checked his tactical display. 11 minutes, 47 seconds remaining on the original timeline. They'd done it. 4 sites, 4 deployments. All neutralized with, he pulled up the casualty reports Nezu was streaming, 138 civilian deaths, 47 injuries, 0 hero fatalities. Horrific numbers by any measure. War crimes prosecutable in any international court. But compared to the tens of thousands who would have died if Nova 6 had spread unchecked across Musu Tafu, it's not enough, Midoriya said quietly, apparently reading the casualty reports on his own device. 138 people, that's too many. We should have been faster, should have done exactly what we did. Price interrupted firmly. Listen to me, kid. You want to be a hero? Learn this now. You don't get to save everyone. You make the hard calls. You prioritize. You accept that sometimes the best outcome still includes casualties. Those 138 people? I'll remember every one of them. I'll write the reports. I'll attend the memorials if your government permits it. But I won't pretend we failed because we didn't achieve perfection. We succeeded because we prevented catastrophe. That's the job. That's what soldiers and heroes actually do. Midoriya was quiet for a long moment. Then, does it ever get easier? The losing people part? No, Price replied honestly. But you get better at carrying it. Better at honoring them by saving the next ones. Better at remembering that grief is the price of caring enough to try. The debriefing happened 12 hours later in Yue's secured conference room. The same room where they'd first met Nezu and explained their impossible situation. But now the room was crowded. Pro-heroes, government officials, and Hero Commission representatives, police leadership. And in the corner, monitoring everything with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes, Principal Nezu. Price stood at the head of the table, his team flanking him, their weapons finally secured, their tactical gear exchanged for borrowed civilian clothes that fit poorly but served the purpose. The Nova 6 deployment was coordinated, Price reported, his voice carrying the professional detachment he used for after-action briefings. 5 hostile combatants confirmed dead, 1 captured alive and currently in custody. Chemical weapons secured and awaiting proper disposal using protocols my team will provide. Casualty count, 138 dead, 47 injured. Infrastructure damage, moderate. Psychological impact, severe. And the individuals responsible? A government official asked, his tone suggesting he wanted someone to blame. The villains who deployed these weapons. Russian military, Ghost replied, his voice flat. Based on accent, equipment, and tactical training. Spetsnaz-level operators, professional soldiers, not typical villains. Someone sent them here with specific mission parameters, maximum casualties using chemical weapons in civilian areas. But who? The official pressed. Who sent them? Who's coordinating this? That, Price said carefully, is the question we can't answer yet. Because the Russians we captured aren't talking. And the phenomenon that moved us here, that apparently moved Nova 6 here, that's beyond our expertise. We're soldiers, not scientists. We understand tactics and weapons, not dimensional translocation. Nezu spoke up from his corner. Which brings us to the larger question, what do we do with Task Force 141? They've proven their value in this crisis, but they remain foreign military operators operating illegally in our reality. Technically, we should detain them pending international resolution. Technically, All Might said from his position beside Nezu, his diminished form somehow carrying authority anyway. They saved thousands of lives, taught our heroes how to respond to threats we've never encountered, demonstrated professional expertise that exceeded our own in specialized warfare. Detaining them seems counterproductive. They're also stranded, Endeavor added, his tone grudging but acknowledging reality. If they could return to their reality, they would have already done so. which means they're here indefinitely unless we solve the translocation phenomenon. Making them prisoners serves no purpose. Then what? The government official demanded. We just let foreign soldiers operate freely in Japan? Set a precedent that anyone who appears mysteriously can claim refugee status and carry military weapons. Price had been waiting for this. Had prepared his argument during the helicopter ride back to UA after the final site was secured. We offer a deal, he said. Task Force 141 has expertise your reality lacks. Chemical weapons, counterterrorism, unconventional warfare, tactical operations that don't rely on superpowers. We've demonstrated that value today. So we propose we operate as special consultants to your hero commission. Classified status, limited deployment. We handle threats that fall outside standard hero response parameters. In exchange, you provide us legal status, operational support, and research into the phenomenon that brought us here. You're proposing, Nezu said slowly, that we essentially hire you as black operations specialists. Soldiers who handle problems quietly while heroes handle them publicly. I'm proposing, Price corrected, that we do what we're good at. Save lives, stop threats, operate in the shadows so your heroes can operate in the light. Same thing we've done for 30 years in our reality, just in yours instead. The room fell silent as officials processed the proposal. Then Nezu smiled. That small, unsettling smile that suggested the principal had anticipated exactly this outcome and was pleased it had arrived. I find this proposal acceptable, Nezu said. Pending government approval, of course, but I believe I can make a compelling case that Task Force 141 represents a valuable asset rather than a liability. All might? Agreed, the former #1 hero said. These men understand warfare at a level most heroes never achieve. They think strategically, adapt tactically, and most importantly, he looked directly at Price. They understand that sometimes the quietest solutions prevent the loudest catastrophes. That's wisdom worth preserving. Endeavor. The current #1 hero was quiet for a long moment. Then, they're professional, effective, willing to follow protocols when explained, and his jaw tightened. They achieved results I'm not certain I could have achieved alone. That earns respect. Conditional acceptance. The government officials conferred quietly. Price waited, his tactical mind already planning contingencies if this proposal failed. They had weapons. They had training. They could disappear into this reality's infrastructure if necessary. But cooperation would achieve more than conflict. Provisional agreement, the lead official finally said. 6-month trial period. Task Force 141 operates under Hero Commission oversight. Limited deployment. Classified operations only, and if you prove to be a liability instead of an asset, you'll revoke our status and we'll face consequences, Price finished. Understood, we accept those terms. Paperwork was signed, credentials were issued, legal status was granted with so many classified restrictions that Price suspected even Nezu didn't know all of them. And Task Force 141 officially became the first interdimensional black operations unit in My Hero Academia's reality. 3 weeks later, Price stood on UA's observation deck, looking out at a city that was simultaneously familiar and alien. The same stars, different constellations, the same moon, different orbital patterns, the same Earth, different reality. Settling in, Soap asked, joining him with 2 cups of coffee that tasted almost but not quite like what they were used to. Adapting, Price replied. It's what we do. Though I admit, I never expected to spend my retirement training teenage superheroes in chemical warfare protocols. Retirement, Ghost said, appearing from the shadows with his characteristic silence. That's a good joke, Cap. We're soldiers. We don't retire. What, we just find new wars. And this is definitely a new war, Gaz added, reviewing intelligence reports on his tablet. Technology provided by the Hero Commission that made their old equipment look like toys. I'm reading threat assessments about villain organizations with resources that rival nation-states. About teenagers fighting battles that would give special forces pause. about a society built on superpowers that's still vulnerable to the same problems we've been fighting for decades. Corruption, Price said quietly. Terrorism, power struggles, chemical weapons. The packaging is different. The uniforms are different, but war stays the same. So what now? Soap asked. We're stuck here indefinitely. Can't go home, can't contact our command, can't even confirm our reality still exists, or if we've been written off as KIA. We're ghosts, officially dead in our world, unofficially alive in this one. What's the play? Price sipped his coffee, thinking about Kate Laswell, who was probably mourning them, about operations left unfinished, about enemies left unkilled, about a war that would continue without them. Then he thought about Midoriya's earnest determination, about Nezu's calculated trust, about All Might's wisdom that strength meant nothing without the choice to protect, about a city full of people with superpowers who still needed soldiers who understood that sometimes the quietest trigger pull prevented the loudest catastrophe. The play, Price said finally, is the same as it's always been. We adapt, we survive, and we fight. Different reality, different rules. Why say mission? He turned to face his team, Ghost with his skull mask that never showed emotion but always conveyed loyalty. Soap with his barely controlled aggression channeled into professional excellence. Gaz with his tactical brilliance that made impossible shots look easy. We're Task Force 141, Price continued. We don't quit because circumstances change. We don't abandon the fight because we're in unfamiliar territory. We do the job. We save lives. We stop threats that no one else can stop. And if that means doing it in a reality where people can fly and shoot fire from their hands, he shrugged, then that's where we do it. Besides, Ghost added, his voice carrying dark humor, we've got a mystery to solve. Someone opened a door between realities. Someone transported Nova 6. Someone wanted us here for a reason. And I don't like unanswered questions. Neither do I, Price agreed. So we gather intelligence. We hunt for whoever's manipulating dimensional barriers. And when we find them, we complete the mission. Soap finished with grim satisfaction. They stood together on the observation deck, 4 soldiers from another reality, looking out at a world of superheroes that was learning what soldiers from every reality already knew. That power without discipline was just chaos waiting to happen. That strength without purpose was just violence looking for direction. And that sometimes the most important battles weren't fought in the light where heroes posed for cameras. They were fought in the shadows where soldiers did the quiet work of preventing catastrophe before it could begin. Task Force 141 was stranded, displaced, operating in a reality that defied everything they'd trained for. But they were soldiers, and soldiers adapted, no matter the universe.